Most people think compatibility is the magic glue that keeps relationships thriving. Welcome to Emotional Shadow. They believe that when two people just click, everything else naturally falls into place. Communication becomes effortless, trust becomes automatic, and love becomes a steady flame that never flickers. But what if that belief is not just incomplete, but dangerously misleading? What if the very thing you depend on compatibility has a shadow side no one prepares you for? A hidden layer that quietly shapes your choices, manipulates your emotional responses, and binds you to someone in ways you don't fully understand. The shocking truth is that compatibility can create a psychological comfort zone so powerful that it blinds you to subtle patterns that slowly destabilize emotional well-being. And it happens long before you ever notice something is wrong. Compatibility didn't always hold the romantic weight it does today. Historically, relationships were driven by survival, social alliances, and economic necessity. Emotional resonance was a luxury, not a requirement. It wasn't until modern psychology, through the work of Carl Jung, John Bowlby, Esther Perel, and other relationship theorists, that we began to rethink why certain bonds feel irresistibly natural. Jung talked about the anima and animus, inner psychic energies that attract us to familiar traits. Bowlby revealed how attachment patterns formed in childhood shape adult intimacy. But here's the twist these theories hinted at, though people rarely highlighted. Compatibility often emerges not from what is healthy, but from what is familiar. And familiarity includes wounds, fears, unmet needs, and unconscious emotional blueprints we carry without questioning. This is where the shadow side begins, when compatibility isn't alignment, but repetition. And in many relationships, that repetition becomes a quiet trap. The origins of the shadow side can often be traced back to early emotional experiences. People gravitate toward what feels known, even if what feels known is chaotic, distant, or inconsistent. Two people may label their instant connection as chemistry, destiny, or soulmate energy, when in reality, it's an echo, a reenactment of unresolved emotional patterns. Someone who grew up earning affection might feel compatible with a partner who gives affection unpredictably. Someone who fears abandonment might feel compatible with a partner who needs constant reassurance. Someone who avoids emotional closeness may feel comfortable with a partner who doesn't challenge that avoidance. This doesn't look toxic. In the beginning, it looks natural. It feels like compatibility, but slowly, it sets the stage for unbalanced dynamics. As relationships progress, this pattern deepens. The rise of emotional dependence, comfort, and predictability reinforces the bond, but it also disguises the early cracks forming beneath the surface. The compatibility that once felt grounding becomes restrictive. People begin to adjust themselves not consciously, but subtly to maintain the connection. One partner becomes the peacekeeper, the other becomes the decision maker. One becomes the emotional anchor, the other becomes the emotional project. And both roles feel right, because the compatibility supports them. But compatibility that locks two people into fixed emotional roles eventually suffocates growth. The breaking point usually doesn't arrive in a dramatic explosion. It shows up quietly, in moments that feel too small to matter. Emotional exhaustion, suppressed needs, unspoken resentments, or a growing sense of emptiness, despite the relationship appearing perfectly stable. The couple doesn't fight because incompatibility destroyed them. They fall apart because compatibility acted like a mask that hid the imbalances, the unhealthy reinforcement loops, and the emotional sacrifices required to maintain the illusion. The consequences can be far deeper than ordinary heartbreak. When the shadow side of compatibility takes over, emotional intimacy collapses in a way that feels confusing and disorienting. People say things like, "I don't know who I am anymore," or "I lost my identity in this relationship." They describe a sense of being trapped even when their partner wasn't controlling. They talk about feeling responsible for the other person's emotions, expectations, or stability. And when they try to fix things, they often fail, not because they don't comunicat, but because communication itself reinforces the same emotional structures they're trying to escape. They keep having the right conversations in the wrong emotional system. Modern relationship patterns show the same issue repeating again and again. Studies reveal that people are more likely to choose partners who mirror the emotional environment of their upbringing, even when they consciously seek different traits. Digital communication makes emotional resemblance easier to misread as compatibility. Social media romanticizes the idea of finding someone who feels like home, without acknowledging that home may contain unresolved emotional history. And manipulation becomes harder to detect because most individuals don't intentionally manipulate. They simply react from their old emotional patterns. When two people are perfectly compatible in their dysfunction, the relationship becomes a self-reinforcing loop. The shadow side becomes clearest in the moments where something feels off, but there is no clear reason. The partner doesn't yell, doesn't lie, doesn't cheat, doesn't betray. Nothing is obviously wrong, yet the emotional connection slowly dissolves. This happens because compatibility made the relationship feel so safe and familiar that neither partner noticed the invisible emotional power dynamics at play. They don't notice how certain needs were never expressed, how certain patterns never evolved, how certain emotional instincts were never challenged. Compatibility becomes comfort. Comfort becomes complacency, and complacency becomes emotional stagnation. 3. Takeaways become essential when trying to understand this hidden side of intimate bonds. First, compatibility is not an endpoint, it's a starting point. A relationship built solely on initial resonance is like a house built on sand. It feels stable until the deeper layers shift. Second, emotional growth must exist alongside compatibility. If a relationship feels comfortable but never pushes you toward healthier patterns, the shadow side may already be active. Third, ongoing communication must include self-awareness, not just you must understand not only your partner, but the patterns that shape why you are drawn to them. In the end, the shadow side of compatibility reminds us that love is fragile, not because people fail each other intentionally, but because emotional history quietly shapes the choices they believe they're making freely. Every relationship carries both light and shadow, and recognizing that duality is the only way to build intimacy that lasts beyond the initial spark. If we don't explore the shadow, we risk losing the very connection we hoped compatibility would protect. If this deeper look into the hidden layers of relationships resonated with you, subscribe for more insights into emotional patterns, connection, psychology, and the unseen forces shaping love. Your awareness is your greatest power, and together, we explore everything that usually remains unspoken.